I watched my phone light up with a frantic international call from my mom. The same woman who claimed she was too sick to come to my graduation. For the first time ever, I just smiled and hit decline. If you told me a year ago I'd leave my parents stranded in a foreign country begging for cash, I'd say you were crazy. I was the reliable one. The fixer. I always bent over backward to keep the peace. But betrayal completely rewires your brain. Once you finally see the people who raised you for who they really are, all that guilt just evaporates. It leaves behind this cold, hard clarity. To understand how I ended up ignoring their panicked calls, we gotta go back. I grew up in a house where appearances were literally everything. My parents were obsessed with looking successful. We lived in this gorgeous house, drove leased luxury cars, and wore all the right logos. But behind closed doors, we were drowning. They lived in a constant state of financial panic. They were always robbing Peter to pay Paul, maxing out credit cards for country club memberships they never even used, all just to impress neighbors they didn't even like. In this house of cards, we all had our roles. My older sister, Chloe, was the golden child. She was loud, demanding, and cared about all the same superficial stuff they did. I was the invisible workhorse. Quiet, studious, and totally uninterested in their little game. Because I didn't throw tantrums for designer bags, they just assumed I didn't need anything. Chloe dropped out of 3 different community colleges, but she still lived at home, fully funded. They paid for her car, her insurance, and her endless fake business ventures. But when I got accepted into a top-tier engineering program, the dynamic got real obvious. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table looking super serious. My dad gave me this practiced look of sorrow. I believed them. I took out massive student loans and worked 3 jobs at once. I had worked the early morning shift at a campus coffee shop, smelling like burnt milk through all my lectures. On weekends, I worked overnight shifts at a hotel front desk. I used the quiet hours between 2 and 5 a.m. to furiously write essays. I exhausted myself to the bone, missing out on the typical college experience. And yet, during those 4 years, I'd see my parents posting photos from weekend getaways. I'd see Chloe driving a brand new SUV they helped her finance. It was a blatant disparity. Whenever I brought it up, the gaslighting was immediate. My mom would tear up and accuse me of counting their pennies. I was always made to feel like the greedy, ungrateful daughter. But graduation was supposed to be different. I was graduating at the top of my class and had a great job lined up. I desperately wanted my parents to sit in the audience and finally say they were proud of me. 6 months before the ceremony, they promised they'd be there. My mom even made a big show of telling me she bought a special dress. For a brief moment, I actually believed my achievement was enough for them. Then came the week of graduation. It was a Tuesday, and I was packing up my apartment when my phone rang. It was my dad, and his voice was hushed and serious. He told me my mom had collapsed that morning. He said her heart was palpitating and she was on the verge of a massive stress event. My heart leapt into my throat. He said the doctor prescribed a secluded, off-the-grid wellness retreat. They had to leave immediately and they'd be completely out of touch. I hung up feeling sick, pushing down a gnawing suspicion that something was wrong. The next day, my dad stopped by my place for barely 5 minutes. So he said they needed to borrow my large vintage suitcase for my mom's medical equipment. I handed it over, and he sped off. Saturday finally arrived. It was graduation day, the day I had broken my back for 4 years to reach. The campus was a sea of joy. Families everywhere, taking photos. But I walked through that crowd completely alone. I sat in the middle of the massive auditorium. I was surrounded by classmates waving to their families in the stands. The air was thick with pride and celebration, but the empty seats where my parents should have been felt like a physical weight. When my name was called, I walked across the stage. There was polite applause from strangers, but no familiar shout. No one standing up for me. I took my diploma and forced a smile. I walked back to my seat, feeling this hollow, aching emptiness in my chest. After the ceremony ended, I didn't linger. I couldn't bear to watch the family reunions. I just drove back to my half-empty apartment. I ordered a pizza and sat on the floor of my living room, still wearing my cap and gown. I tried to tell myself I was being strong, making a sacrifice for my mother's health, but I just cried. It was around 8 o'clock that night when my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, expecting a text from a friend. But instead, it was an automated push notification. The notification read, "AirTag battery low." I stared at the screen, completely confused. I only owned one AirTag. And honestly, I had completely forgotten it even existed. About 2 years prior, after my luggage got lost, I bought a single AirTag. I buried it deep inside the inner lining of my vintage suitcase. The exact same suitcase my father just borrowed. I tapped the notification, opening the map. I fully expected the little blue dot to show up somewhere in the mountains. You know, where this supposed off-the-grid wellness retreat was located. Instead, the map opened up to a massive expanse of blue. The dot was completely off the coast. I zoomed out again and again. I watched in total disbelief as the dot approached Mexico. My mind was racing, trying to find any logical explanation. I needed more information, so with shaking hands, I pulled out my laptop. Years ago, I set up a shared family iCloud account because my parents were terrible with tech. I still had the master login saved in my password manager. I'd never used it to snoop before. I always respected their privacy. But right then, needing the truth completely overrode any hesitation. I logged in and clicked straight over to the synced photo stream. The images took a few agonizing seconds to load. When they finally did, the bottom completely fell out of my stomach. My vision just blurred. There were dozens of photos taken within the last 48 hours. The first one was of my mom, the woman supposedly on the verge of a massive heart attack. She was wearing a glamorous sun hat, holding a cocktail and smiling on a luxury cruise balcony. The next photo was of my dad and my sister, Chloe. They were clinking champagne glasses by a private pool. Chloe was wearing a designer swimsuit I'd seen her eyeing online. They were on a high-end, 2-week Caribbean luxury cruise. I just sat there, in the dark. The laptop screen illuminated my tear-stained face. I was staring at the undeniable proof of their betrayal. My mom wasn't sick. The whole story was an elaborate lie just to skip my graduation. But the betrayal ran even deeper than just the lie. I clicked over to my dad's synced email app. If they were on this cruise, I wanted to know exactly how they paid for it. I typed the cruise line's name into the search bar. The confirmation emails popped up instantly. I opened the first one and checked the date. The booking had been made 8 months ago. They had known for 8 months that they were going to miss my graduation. They lied to my face for over half a year, making fake dinner reservations and talking about fake dresses. And then I saw the final receipts. The total cost came out to over $22,000. I felt a sharp, physical pain in my chest. They weren't broke. They just chose not to spend a single dime on me. They funded this extravagant lifestyle for themselves and Chloe, all while watching me drown under the weight of my own ambition. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. The tears just stopped. In that moment, this profound, chilling calmness washed over me. It felt like a heavy, suffocating chain finally snapping. I realized I'd spent my whole life trying to earn their love, but they were fundamentally incapable of giving it to me. I was playing a game I was never gonna win. They didn't see me as a daughter. They just saw me as a self-sustaining appliance. I closed the laptop. I took off my graduation gown, folded it up neatly, and put it away. I didn't feel the need to cry anymore. The worst had already happened. The illusion was finally broken. I went to sleep that night with this strange, undeniable sense of peace. I was finally free. For the next 2 days, I just went about my life. I started packing up my apartment and getting ready for my new job. I didn't reach out to them at all. I let them enjoy their stolen vacation. They were completely unaware that the curtain had been pulled back. I was officially done being the reliable fixer for their drama. But karma is an incredibly efficient force when it wants to be. By Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting at a local coffee shop, just reviewing some onboarding documents for my new engineering gig, just enjoying a quiet moment to myself. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down and saw a text from an unknown international number. It read, "Please call us immediately." "It's an emergency. This is Dad." I just stared at the message. I didn't panic, and I definitely didn't rush to call him back. 5 minutes later, another text came through. "We're in trouble. Please answer your phone." Then the phone actually started ringing. It was a WhatsApp audio call from Chloe's account. I watched the screen flash for a few seconds. Took a slow sip of my coffee. Let it go to voicemail and put my phone face down. 10 minutes later, I finally checked my voicemail. What I heard was the sound of sheer, unadulterated panic. It was my father. His usual arrogant tone was completely gone. He sounded breathless and terrified. He told me they were in Cozumel, Mexico. They had taken a cheap taxi to save money, and the driver never came back. By the time they got back to the port, the ship had sailed without them. All their passports, wallets, and cash were locked in their cabin safe. They had absolutely nothing. He begged me to wire them $5,000 immediately. I sat there listening to the message again. The sheer audacity of it was almost poetic. After abandoning me on graduation day for a luxury vacation, I was still expected to be their emergency fund. So I waited an hour. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the anxiety I had felt for the last 4 years. Finally, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. He answered on the first ring, gasping with relief. In the background, I could hear cars honking and my mother sobbing. He immediately started issuing commands about the wire transfer. He didn't ask how my graduation was or how I was doing. I kept my voice completely flat and devoid of emotion and simply asked him where they were. His impatience flared up instantly. He snapped that they were in Cozumel, that they missed the ship, and that I needed to move quickly to save them. I leaned back in my chair completely unfazed. I told him that was strange because I thought they were at an off-the-grid wellness retreat in the mountains. Dead silence on the other end of the line. The background noise seemed to fade away completely. I could hear my father's breathing hitch. He stammered, trying to feign confusion, but his voice cracked. I told him I knew about the cruise and the $22,000. I told him I saw the pictures and the receipts. I knew they had been planning this for 8 months. They made up an elaborate, disgusting lie about Mom's health just to skip my graduation." His tone immediately shifted from desperate to defensive. That old, authoritative anger crept right back into his voice. He yelled that I had no right to snoop through their things. He claimed they deserved a vacation and didn't want to deal with my guilt tripping. I let out a dry, humorless laugh at the accusation. I reminded him that he looked me in the eye and said they were broke. He made me take out thousands in loans while I worked 3 jobs. I ruined my health and missed out on my youth for them. And then they skipped the proudest moment of my life for a vacation. I told him he didn't sacrifice anything for me. He sacrificed me for his own comfort. The truth was finally out in the open, and it felt incredibly validating. Panic returned to his voice as he realized the severity of his situation. He yelled that they were in danger and stranded in a foreign country. He begged me to help them, claiming that we were family. He thought the word family would still work like a magic spell. I simply said no. The word felt incredible, like a physical weight lifting off my chest. I told him they were not my family. Family shows up. Family doesn't lie. And family doesn't use people. Suddenly, I heard my mother scream in the background. She had obviously grabbed the phone from him. She yelled that I owed them and that they could be stuck there for days. She tried to use guilt one last time, crying that they had no place to sleep. I replied smoothly that they were resourceful people. They managed to plan a secret luxury cruise for 8 months without me noticing. They managed to fake a life-threatening illness flawlessly. I suggested Chloe could start a business venture on the beach to raise the funds. My father roared into the speaker, his voice echoing with rage. He told me that if I hung up the phone, I was dead to them. He threatened that if I left them there, I should never come back to their house. It was the ultimate ultimatum from a man who had already lost. I hung up the phone. I didn't block their numbers right away, though. I honestly just wanted to see exactly how far they would go. For the next 3 hours, my phone just completely blew up. Texts, voicemails, WhatsApp messages, you name it. They tried guilt, they tried rage, they tried bargaining. Chloe sent me a voice note sobbing hysterically. She called me a monster. She even claimed she was going to get kidnapped because of my selfishness. My dad sent me a text threatening to sue me. He said I owed them for the cost of raising me. It was just pure, desperate panic. I didn't respond to a single one of them. I just read them, completely detached. I sat there watching them spiral into the reality of their own helpless situation. After a few hours, the messages finally stopped. They had realized the well had run dry. The ATM was officially closed. I found out later through an aunt what actually happened to them. They were stuck in Cozumel for 4 miserable days. Without passports, they couldn't just hop on a commercial flight back. Chloe had to frantically message all her friends, begging for Venmo transfers. She scraped together just enough for a roach-infested motel on the outskirts of town. They were terrified out of their minds. Eventually, my dad had to call his business partner and confess everything. He had to beg him to wire funds for emergency flights. The humiliation they faced was absolute. By the time they made it back to their pristine suburban house, they were broke and exhausted. And they were the laughingstock of their social circle, because the business partner told everyone exactly why they needed the money. When they finally got home, my mother sent this long, rambling email trying to gaslight me one last time. She said my refusal to help proved I was cruel and actually demanded an apology and repayment for their flights. I didn't reply. I just printed the email, put it in a folder with the cruise receipts and the screenshots from Mexico, and tucked it away. Then I blocked their phone numbers. I blocked their emails. I blocked Chloe on every single social media platform. I sent a polite message to the extended family explaining I was stepping away permanently and asked them to respect my privacy. And then I moved on. I packed up my apartment, moved to a new city for my engineering job, and started my life completely fresh. I furnished my new place exactly how I wanted it and started building a real savings account. The hardest part of walking away isn't the dramatic exit. It's the quiet moments afterward. It's building new holiday traditions, or instinctively reaching for the phone, only to remember the mom you want to call doesn't actually exist. But the peace that comes with it is profound. I no longer live in constant anxiety. I don't feel that crushing weight of trying to prove my worth anymore. I sleep soundly at night knowing my life is entirely my own. Sometimes I think about them. I heard through the grapevine that my dad's business took a massive hit, mostly from the embarrassment of the cruise fiasco. They actually had to downsize to a much smaller house. Chloe is still living with them, still bouncing from one failed idea to the next, totally dependent on their dwindling resources. They're trapped in the exact dynamic they created, feeding off each other's toxicity in a shrinking world. Meanwhile, my world has only grown larger. I look at my college diploma, and I don't see a symbol of abandonment anymore. I see a testament to my own absolute resilience. I see the exact moment I became the author of my own life. They thought they were leaving me behind to celebrate themselves. But the truth is, the moment that ship left them stranded, they handed me the greatest gift possible. They gave me permission to finally let them go. And I haven't looked back since. My world didn't just change after that. It expanded in ways I never even thought were possible. Walking around my new city, I finally felt like I belonged somewhere. Every step was a reminder that I wasn't trapped in their drama anymore. I heard through the grapevine that my dad's business never bounced back. The embarrassment from that whole cruise fiasco kind of sealed the deal. He finally had to face the reality he'd been running from his whole life. The wealthy facade he cared so much about was just gone. My mom ended up trapped in this shrinking little world, too. Without the luxury trips and the country club, she didn't have an audience to perform for anymore. She was stuck in that downsized house, surrounded by her own mess. And for the first time, she couldn't just buy her way out of it. And Chloe was right there with them, still bouncing from one failed idea to the next. She was totally dependent on whatever money they had left. They were all just trapped in the exact dynamic they built. Just feeding off each other's toxicity, day in and day out. Meanwhile, my life was moving forward faster than I ever dreamed. I threw myself into my engineering career, working with people who actually respected me. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was actively building a future I was genuinely excited about. I still catch myself looking at my college diploma on the wall sometimes. It used to be this painful reminder of the day they abandoned me. But now, it means something totally different. It's proof of my resilience and the exact moment I stopped being a victim. That old, cracked phone that used to bring me nothing but panic now just sits quietly on my desk. It doesn't hold any power over me anymore. I don't jump when it rings, and I don't dread checking my messages. The silence from them isn't an absence. It's just peace. I honestly thought they were leaving me behind to go celebrate themselves. They really believed they were sailing off toward this better, luxurious horizon. They thought they'd outsmarted me. They had no idea they were actually doing me a massive favor. The second that ship left them stranded on the dock, All that heavy baggage I'd carried for them was finally lifted. That old suitcase that exposed the truth is just a forgotten object now. By leaving me, they gave me the ultimate permission to finally let them go. I haven't looked back since that day. The guilt is completely gone, replaced by this quiet, unshakable confidence. I'm the author of my own life now. And as I look out at the horizon, I know the best chapters are still ahead of me. Waking up in my new place still kind of feels like a dream. There's no knot of anxiety in my stomach anymore. No frantic texts, no fake emergencies waiting for me to fix. I actually take my time making coffee now. I used to smell like burnt espresso from those brutal early shifts just trying to survive. Now, it just means it's a new day and it's all mine. The walk to my firm is honestly my favorite part of the morning. The city's loud, but it feels so welcoming. I'm not that invisible workhorse carrying someone else's baggage anymore. At work, I'm surrounded by people who actually respect what I have to say. When I speak up, they listen. It's wild comparing that to a family who just saw me as an appliance. I check my bank account now and actually see my savings growing. For years, I lived in total financial panic because of the debt they pushed on me. Building my own safety net? Best feeling in the world. My evenings are super quiet, and I've really learned to love it. I used to hate the silence because it just meant I was alone and exhausted. Oh, now it honestly feels like a warm blanket. On weekends, I hit up the farmer's market for fresh food. There was a time I lived off instant noodles for weeks just to buy textbooks. Treating myself now as a little victory I never take for granted. I've built a circle of friends who value me for me. We hang out, support each other, and there's zero hidden agenda. I finally get what a real, chosen family looks like. I look at this silver watch I've worn for years. It used to just count down the hours between my 3 jobs. Now, it just ticks away the moments of a life I built myself. Standing out here at night, looking at the city, I just breathe. The air literally feels lighter. I survived all the lies and manipulation, and I came out completely whole. It was around 8 o'clock that night. I was just sitting there in my apartment, still feeling completely hollow. Then my phone buzzed on the counter, breaking the silence. I picked it up, expecting a text from a friend. Instead, it was a push notification from the Find My app. It just said, AirTag battery low. I stared at the screen, totally confused. I only owned 1 AirTag. I had buried it deep inside my vintage suitcase years ago. I completely forgot it was even in there. My dad had taken that exact suitcase just days ago. He said Mom needed it for her medical equipment at the retreat. I tapped the notification, expecting the map to show them up in the mountains. But when the map loaded, they weren't in the mountains. The screen just opened up to this massive expanse of blue. The dot was completely off the coast. I zoomed out, trying to make sense of it. I zoomed out again, and my stomach dropped. The dot was moving slowly through the Caribbean Sea. It was heading straight for the coast of Mexico. My breath caught in my throat. I just sat there, paralyzed, staring at the screen. My mind was racing, trying to find some logical explanation. Had my dad's car been broken into? I tried to tell myself the suitcase was stolen. Maybe it was sold to someone who was traveling? But it was supposed to be full of Mom's medical equipment. None of it made any sense. I needed more information right then. My hands were actually shaking as I opened my laptop. Years ago, I set up a shared family iCloud account for my parents. So I still had the master login saved. I had never used it to snoop before. I always respected their privacy. But right then, I just needed the truth. I logged in, clicked on the photo stream, and waited for it to load. The images took an agonizing few seconds to load. When they finally appeared, the bottom completely fell out of my stomach. My vision blurred, and a loud, rushing sound filled my ears. There were dozens of photos populating the screen. All of them were timestamped within the last 48 hours. It was a digital timeline of their whereabouts, completely destroying the story I'd been told. The very first photo was of my mother. The woman who was supposedly on the verge of a stress-induced heart attack. She was wearing a glamorous sun hat, holding a cocktail and smiling radiantly on a luxury cruise balcony. The next photo showed my father and my sister, Chloe. They were clinking champagne glasses by a private pool. Chloe was wearing a designer swimsuit I'd seen her eyeing online weeks ago. I scrolled through pictures of them eating at a lavish captain's dinner, getting massages in a spa, and posing in front of the ship's massive logo. It wasn't a secluded wellness retreat. It was a high-end, exclusive 2-week Caribbean luxury cruise. I sat there in my dark apartment, the stark light from the laptop screen illuminating my tear-stained face. I was staring at the undeniable, photographic proof of their ultimate betrayal. They weren't in a rustic cabin, and my mother wasn't sick. The dramatic phone call, the doctor's warning, the desperate need for my suitcase. It was all a meticulously crafted, elaborate lie. They invented a life-threatening illness just to skip my graduation. But the betrayal ran even deeper than just the lie itself. I needed to know how they had afforded this. So I clicked over to my father's synced email application. I typed the name of the cruise line into the search bar. My heart was pounding against my ribs. The confirmation emails popped up instantly, revealing the timeline of their deception. The booking had been made 8 months ago. For 8 entire months. They had known they were going to miss my graduation. Lying to my face about fake dinner reservations while counting down the days to their secret getaway. I felt a physical pain in my chest. $22,000. They spent $22,000 on a luxury vacation. I thought about the nights I cried myself to sleep from exhaustion. I thought about eating nothing but instant noodles. And the massive loans I took out because my dad swore they were broke. They weren't broke. They just chose not to spend their money on me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. The tears just stopped. And this profound, chilling calmness washed over me. It felt like a heavy, suffocating chain had finally snapped. I realized I'd spent my whole life trying to earn the love of people who just couldn't give it to me. So I closed the laptop. I stood up in the quiet apartment and took off my graduation gown. I folded the dark fabric up neatly. For the first time in days, I didn't feel abandoned anymore. I placed it into a cardboard box and tucked it away. The worst had already happened. The grand illusion of my family was broken. And I was finally free. I went to sleep that night with this strange, undeniable sense of peace. For the next 2 days, I just went about my life. I let them enjoy their stolen vacation, completely unaware that I knew everything. I spent the weekend packing up my apartment. I organized my schedule for my new engineering job. I didn't reach out to them once. I was just focused on my own fresh start. By Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting at a coffee shop. I was just reviewing some onboarding documents for my new gig. The vibe was relaxed, and everything finally felt normal. Then my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from an unknown international number. It said, Please call us immediately. It's an emergency. This is Dad. I just stared at it. I just stared at the message for a second. A year ago, I would have been having a full-blown panic attack. But now, I just took a slow sip of my coffee and didn't type a single word. About 5 minutes went by before the phone buzzed again. Another text popped up. It said they were in trouble and begged me to answer. You could practically feel the desperation radiating off the screen. Right after that, the phone actually started ringing. It was an audio call from Chloe's account. I didn't even reach for it. I just sat back and watched the screen flash. I let it ring until it finally went to voicemail. Once the screen went dark, I picked it up, and I just calmly placed it face down on the table. I wasn't going to let their mess ruin my afternoon. I made myself wait 10 whole minutes before checking the voicemail. When I finally listened to it, I heard pure, unadulterated panic. It was my dad. His usual arrogant, composed tone was completely gone. He sounded breathless and totally terrified. He said they were in Cozumel, Mexico. They took a private taxi to save a few bucks on excursion fees, and the driver ditched them. They barely made it back to the port. And the kicker? The ship sailed without them. All their passports, wallets, and cash were locked in their cabin safe. He demanded I wire them $5,000 immediately so they could book flights. I just sat there in the coffee shop, listening to the message again. The sheer audacity of it was almost poetic. They blew $22,000 on a luxury vacation. And now they expected me to drain my savings to bail them out? I decided I wasn't going to rush to their rescue. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the anxiety they put me through for 4 years. So I went back to my paperwork and made them wait a full hour. Finally, when the hour was up, I picked up the phone. I dialed the international number. My heart wasn't even racing. I was completely ready to confront the people who had used me my entire life. My father picked up on the very first ring. He was gasping, saying, "Oh, thank God," like I was his savior. In the background, I could hear cars honking and my mother sobbing loudly. He immediately told me to go to my bank and wire them $5,000 to $7,000. He didn't ask how my graduation went. He didn't even bother to ask how I was doing. He just started barking orders at me. He fully expected me to drop everything and drain my savings to fix his massive mistake. I kept my voice completely flat. I refused to give him the satisfaction of hearing me upset. I just asked him, "Where are you exactly?" I let the silence hang there for a second. He snapped back that they were in Cozumel. His old impatience was already flaring up. He complained that they missed the ship and it was a total nightmare. He said my mom was having a panic attack and I needed to move quickly. I leaned back in my chair and said, "That's strange. I thought you were at an off-the-grid wellness retreat in the mountains." Did the holistic doctor prescribe a Caribbean cruise for her heart palpitations? There was dead silence on the other end of the line. All that chaotic background noise just seemed to fade away. I could actually hear his breathing hitch in his throat. The realization had finally hit him. He tried to play dumb, stammering, "What are you talking about?" But his voice completely cracked. That confident, authoritative facade he always wore was crumbling. It was falling apart in real time. I told him, "I know, Dad." My voice was as cold as ice. I know about the cruise, and I know about the $22,000. I saw the pictures, and I saw the receipts. I didn't even let him try to interrupt me. "I know you've been planning this for 8 months, I said. "You made up a disgusting lie about Mom's health, just so you could skip my graduation and sip champagne with Chloe." His tone immediately shifted from desperate to defensive. He started yelling, "Now listen here." That old, authoritative anger was creeping right back in. He actually told me I had no right to snoop through their things. My guilt-tripping? I actually let out this dry, humorless laugh right there in the coffee shop. I reminded him that he looked me dead in the eye and told me they were completely broke. He made me take out thousands in loans while he was secretly funding a luxury vacation. I told him how I worked 3 jobs and completely ruined my health. I missed out on my entire youth because of their lies. And then they skipped the proudest moment of my life just to go sip champagne? They didn't sacrifice a single thing for me. They sacrificed me for their own comfort. He started yelling over the phone, and I could hear the sheer panic coming back. He realized I wasn't going to just roll over and fix it this time. He screamed that they were in danger, stranded in a foreign country with no passports. He actually had the nerve to say I had to help them because we were family? I just said no. And honestly, that one word felt absolutely incredible. It was like this massive, suffocating weight just lifted right off my chest. I told him they weren't my family anymore. Real family shows up, and they don't use people. I made it crystal clear that they had made their choice. They chose to prioritize themselves and their fake image over everything else. They built this whole house of cards, and now it was collapsing. I told him he was just going to have to deal with the consequences. I wasn't bailing them out. Suddenly, I heard my mom screaming in the background. She must have grabbed the phone right out of his hand. She was completely hysterical, demanding that I wire the cash immediately. She actually yelled that I owed them for raising me. She was terrified they were going to be stuck sleeping on the street. I kept my voice totally smooth and told her how resourceful they were. I mean, they managed to fake a life-threatening illness flawlessly, right? And they kept a luxury cruise a secret for 8 whole months. I told her I had absolute faith they'd figure it out. I even suggested Chloe could start one of her little business ventures on the beach. My dad snatched the phone back and he was just roaring into the speaker. He was completely losing his mind. He screamed that if I hung up and left them there, I was dead to them. He threatened that I could never come back to their house again.
It was his ultimate trump card.
I just sat there for a second, letting it sink in. And then I told him the honest truth. I said, "That is the best thing you've ever offered me." I wished him a safe trip back. And then I said goodbye. I hung up the phone and just set it on the table. I didn't block them right away, though. I kind of wanted to see exactly how far they would go. For the next 3 hours, my phone just blew up with texts and voicemails. They tried guilt. They tried rage. They tried bargaining. But I just watched the screen light up, feeling completely detached. I found out later what happened to them. They were stuck in Cozumel for 4 miserable days. Without their passports, they couldn't just hop on a flight back to the States. They had to travel hours to the nearest U.S. consulate just to get emergency passports. The trip was hot, grueling, and filled with constant bickering. Their fancy vacation clothes were completely ruined. Their bank flagged the international charges, so they couldn't even get cash. Chloe had to frantically message all her friends online, begging for Venmo transfers. It was a massive reality check for her. She scraped together just enough for a rundown, roach-infested motel on the outskirts of town. It was a far cry from their luxury cruise suite. They spent the nights absolutely terrified in that cramped room. During the day, they had to survive on cheap street food. My mom, who only eats at 5-star restaurants, looked completely defeated.
The whole ordeal stripped away their perfect fake image.
Eventually, my dad had to call his business partner and confess everything. He had to swallow his pride and beg for money for emergency flights. The humiliation was absolute. By the time they made it back to their pristine house, they were exhausted and broke.
Worse, they were the laughingstock of their social circle.
The business partner told everyone exactly why they needed the bailout. When they got home, my mom sent me a long, rambling email. She tried to gaslight me, calling me cruel and vindictive for not helping. She actually demanded an apology and wanted me to pay for their flights.
I didn't even reply.
I just printed the email and put it in a folder with the cruise receipts and their frantic texts. I tucked it away as the final piece of evidence. Then I blocked their numbers and emails. I blocked Chloe on every social media platform. I sent a polite message to the extended family saying I was stepping away permanently and asked for privacy. I didn't just block their numbers. I completely erased my physical presence from their reach. I packed up my tiny college apartment, boxing up the last 4 years of exhaustion. Then I drove away without a single glance in the rearview mirror. I moved to a brand new city to start my engineering job. I was ready to build a life completely fresh. The air just felt different here. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the crushing weight of my family's financial panic. I finally had the freedom to create a space that was entirely my own. I furnished my new apartment exactly how I wanted it. I filled it with warm light, thriving plants, and a sleek desk. It was my sanctuary. With a steady income and no one draining my resources, I actually started building a real savings account. I'd look at my bank balance and feel this profound sense of security. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was finally building a solid foundation. I also started making new friends who valued me for who I actually was, not for what I could fix for them. We'd grab coffee or explore the city without any hidden agendas. It was incredibly healing to realize relationships didn't have to be exhausting. But the hardest part of walking away from a toxic family isn't the dramatic exit. It's the quiet moments afterward when the adrenaline fades. It's the sudden echoing silence where the chaos used to live. You're left to navigate the grief of what you never really had. It hits you the hardest during the holidays when everyone else is traveling home. You have to learn how to build entirely new traditions from scratch. I spent my first Thanksgiving alone in my apartment. I tried to convince myself that the quiet was a blessing, not a punishment. It also sneaks up on you during moments of genuine success. When I got my first major promotion, my instinct was to reach for my phone. I wanted to call my mom and hear her say she was proud of me, just like I wanted on graduation day. But then I'd stop, my thumb hovering over the screen. I had to remind myself that the supportive mother I desperately wanted to call didn't actually exist. Putting the phone down in those moments was painful. But it was a necessary act of radical acceptance. Despite those fleeting moments of grief, the peace that came with my decision was profound. I no longer lived in a state of constant anxiety, waiting for the next crisis. I could finally sleep soundly at night. I had the quiet certainty that my life was entirely my own. Sometimes I still think about them. I heard through the grapevine that my dad's business took a massive hit. Turns out the embarrassment of that whole cruise fiasco had some real consequences. Having to beg his business partner for emergency flight money completely ruined his reputation. They ended up having to downsize to a much smaller, cramped house. The facade they spent their whole lives building just crumbled. Chloe is still living with them, of course. She's still bouncing from one failed idea to the next. She's entirely dependent on their dwindling resources, still expecting the world to cater to her. They're all trapped in the very dynamic they created. They just feed off each other's toxicity in this shrinking little world. It's sad, but it's not my problem to fix anymore. Meanwhile, my world has only grown larger. I've built a life filled with genuine connection and actual peace. I don't have to shrink myself down to fit into their chaos. I look at my college diploma hanging proudly on the wall of my office. For a long time, looking at it just hurt. But I don't see a symbol of abandonment anymore. Now I see a testament to my own absolute resilience. I see the exact moment I stopped being a victim of my family's dysfunction. I see the girl who survived all of it. That was the moment I finally took control. I stopped waiting for them to save me, and I became the author of my own life. I built my own house, just like he told me to. They thought they were leaving me behind to go celebrate themselves. They thought they were the ones sailing away toward a better horizon. They thought they had won. But the truth is, the moment that ship left them stranded on the dock, they handed me the greatest gift. They gave me the permission to finally let them go. And I haven't looked back since. When you finally break free from a cycle of manipulation, the world looks entirely different. You realize how much energy you spent just trying to keep your head above water. Now, all that energy goes into building something real, something that belongs entirely to me. My career took off in ways I never imagined. For the first time, I was working for my own future. I wasn't just a self-sustaining appliance anymore. I was a person with my own ambitions and dreams. And the people I surround myself with now? They don't ask me to shrink myself to make them comfortable. They value me for exactly who I am. We actually support each other. We celebrate each other's wins without any jealousy or hidden agendas. It's a kind of peace I never knew existed. It took a $22,000 luxury cruise and a fake illness to teach me what love actually isn't. It sounds crazy when I say it out loud,
But that's exactly what it took to snap the chain.
honestly, the cost of my freedom was worth every single penny. I wouldn't change how it happened, because it gave me the absolute clarity I needed to walk away. I used to think my role in life was to be the invisible foundation, just holding up someone else's fragile house of cards. I thought that was all I was good for, but I'm not holding up their lies anymore. Today, I am the architect of my own life. I built this from the ground up, all by myself. And let me tell you, when you finally stop carrying everyone else's baggage, the view from up here is absolutely beautiful. Every now and then, I hear things through the grapevine. Word got around about what happened in Mexico. My dad's business took a massive hit after his partner told everyone why he needed that emergency wire. They couldn't keep up the facade anymore. They had to sell the big house and downsize to something a lot smaller. The image they cared so much about just completely crumbled. And Chloe is still right there with them. She's still bouncing from one failed idea to the next. Only now she's draining whatever little resources they have left. They're trapped in the exact dynamic they created, just feeding off each other's toxicity in a world that keeps getting smaller.
I don't wish bad things for them, but I don't feel sorry for them either.
Meanwhile, my world has only grown larger. I don't have to shrink myself to make anyone else comfortable anymore. I get to just breathe. I look at my college diploma hanging on the wall. For a long time, looking at it just reminded me of being abandoned. It reminded me of sitting in that empty auditorium all alone. But I don't see it that way anymore. Now, I just see a testament to my own resilience.
I see proof that I survived them.
That was the exact moment I stopped being a victim of their dysfunction. I stopped waiting for them to choose me. And I finally decided to choose myself. They really thought they were leaving me behind to go celebrate themselves. They thought they were sailing away toward this perfect horizon. They thought they had won. But the truth is, when that ship left them stranded on the dock, they handed me the greatest gift. They gave me the permission to finally let them go. And I haven't looked back since. They really thought they were the ones sailing off to a better horizon. But getting left on that dock was the best thing they ever did for me. It finally gave me permission to just let them go. I don't have to shrink myself anymore to make them comfortable. I'm not the invisible workhorse, and I'm definitely not their emergency fund. I'm just me.
The hardest part of walking away isn't the big dramatic exit.
It's the quiet moments after, when you realize you're totally on your own. But honestly, that piece is everything. I look at my degree now, and I don't see abandonment. I see the exact moment I stopped being a victim of their dysfunction. I see absolute resilience. My life is entirely my own now, and I haven't looked back since.